Hey, what's up guys? It's Texamer talking to you here. And today I want to do something that I haven't seen many people do, but I think it's important to do. Just because it's important to refresh your minds about it. Because in all of this hype that Apple launched this new Mac Studio, it's important to keep your heads down, focus in what's necessary and what should you have and what should you need. Because it's very, very important that you spend your money accordingly to your needs and not your hype towards something or even your ability to buy something, because I don't think you should waste money. And today I'm here to help you decide between the M1 Max MacBook Pro, because if you are watching this video, I recommend you to be a pro. This is more for prosumers. If you really need that much performance but you don't really like know should I get the MacBook Pro, should I get the new Mac Studio, because this current spec of the MacBook Pro is about the same price as the base model M1 Ultra Mac Studio, but this offers some stuff that it's not factual, the fact that the Mac Studio has a better chip. So yes, in this video I want to compare these two computers, tell you what are the differences, which are the current upgrade paths, and how much will you spend if you upgrade it, or what are the differences between similar priced computers. Because although Apple Silicon is an amazing transition, there's some stuff that are different, there's some stuff that are better on the Mac Studio, and accordingly there's some stuff that are way better on the MacBook Pro, and I think they're a better deal. So yes, in this video I will cover all of that, and if you are excited, please do not forget to leave a like down below and to subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate if you do. So no further ado, roll the intro. So the two current Mac Studio and M1 Max and M1 Pro MacBook Pro start at $2,000. The MacBook Pro starts at $2,000 with a bint M1 Pro version. It has a mini LED display. It starts with 16 gigabytes of RAM and it starts at 512 gigabytes of storage. While the Mac Studio starts at $2,000, gets the bint M1 Max version of the M1 Max chip and starts at 512 gigabytes of storage too. This one also has 32 gigabytes of RAM, while the M1 Pro MacBook Pro 14-inch has 16. So yes, if you really want this base model Mac Studio, like if you don't really care about a computer, you want the cheapest Pro computer and Pro Apple Silicon computer on the lineup, then there's no better deal than this base model Mac Studio, because you get the amazing base model M1 Max, so the bin version, which is incredible. You have to pay $2,500 on the 16-inch computer to get that M1 Max bin version, which is very, very expensive, while the Mac Studio does it at $19.99. But one thing that you lose is that amazing mini LED display and that amazing fact that you can carry it everywhere. But you also get way more I/O and a little bit more gigabytes of RAM. So it's very interesting to analyze these two, because if you analyze the two base model, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max Mac Studio, I think it's incredible how the value changes just within some $100. Because if you start at the base model, then I would have completely advised you to go for the Mac Studio. You will get the M1 Max, which is 2 times better than the M1 Pro, incredibly fast, and you will get 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is plenty enough. You will get 512 gigabytes of storage, which in terms of total storage in a story, it's not that much. But if you, in hindsight, you look at your computer and say, oh my god, I have 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 2 USB-C ports. I can connect so many things here. So the thing that Apple talked about, the modularity on this computer, is the fact that you can connect all sorts of accessories. So yes, the base model is fine. I don't care about the storage on the Mac Studio. You can just connect, because it's a desktop, you can just connect more external storage through the Thunderbolt 4 ports, and you will still get a ton of external Thunderbolt ports if you really need them. So yes, get an external storage and you will be incredibly good with this base model Mac Studio. While the 14-inch MacBook Pro is fast, it's not completely fast, you know what I mean? Like, it's fast, but probably for your work, if you are really prosumer, if you really need this for professional work, is it fast enough? You have to analyze that. If it is, then you have to consider the fact that you will like, by paying $2,000, which is the same amount as the Mac Studio, you will completely get rid of 16 gigabytes of RAM. Yes, because the M1 Pro starts at 16, while the Mac Studio starts at 32. Also, you will have less GPU cores, but otherwise, you will have less I/O, but in my opinion, you will have the best display on the business, which is this mini LED ProMotion 120Hz display. While with the Mac Studio, I have something that I've not mentioned. Although these computers start at $2,000, there's a difference. And I think there's a difference that Apple doesn't want you to think, but it's there. The fact that the MacBook Pro always comes with a display. Because yes, display is right here. It's integrated on its chassis. While the Mac Studio doesn't. You have to provide your own. Either you buy the $1,600 studio display from Apple, or you simply buy a cheaper monitor from everywhere else, and you will lose so much quality by doing that. And you can also get a good 4K panel, which is good. I made a video about one. If you really like my suggestion, there's a Dell. I think Dell monitors are the best for the price, or even LGs. I mean, they're good. They're not that great. Dell Ultra Sharp if you want my suggestion, but I mean, they're not amazing. They are good. They are not even anything compared to the current studio display or even the Amex display. So yes, you have to understand that you will pay the same, but at the end of the story, you will pay more by just choosing the Mac Studio. You will get way more performance, you will get way more I/O, you get way more RAM, but you have to spend money on your display, keyboard, and mouse. If you already have all of those three things, then it's a no-brainer for the Mac Studio. But if you don't, and you really want a good display, you don't really care that much about the performance, you need it, but you don't need extremely amounts of performance, then I do think still the M1 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro is a choice for you. It's light, it's small, it's compact, you can carry it around everywhere because it's a portable computer. The fans are incredible, the battery life, it's incredible, it's like it's always plugged in, you don't really need about that. And of course, it has a mini LED 120Hz ProMotion display. So yes, at the end of the day, you have to understand. Do you want to spend more money on a display, keyboard and mouse and then get the amazing deal that is the current base model Mac Studio and you will be completely done with the computer for the next several years? And when you do need to upgrade, you just upgrade the machine. You don't need to upgrade your display. If your display is a good display, if it's a bad display, you will probably need to upgrade your display in several years too. But do you need a portable computer? And so the base model is so equilibrated that you need to base your decision on these facts. Need a portable computer? Don't need a portable computer? Do I have a display? Don't I have a display? And what's my budget for a display? But yes, it's a difficult decision on the base model side. But when you start upgrading your MacBook Pro, it's when the story changes. Because the upgrade path on the Mac Studio gets expensive very, very fast. Well, the MacBook Pros, they are expensive, don't get me wrong. But if you do buy a M1 Pro 16-inch MacBook Pro, you are paying around $2,500, and that's a way better deal than the upgrade path for the Mac Studio, because you might be getting the incredible M1 Max, which is not pinned now by the same price, and a little bit more storage or RAM, I don't know, you have to choose. I don't think it's a good decision, just because it's actually very expensive to get the very fast M1 Max, and the fastest M1 Max on the MacBook Pro is like $3,500 or $3,200. It's very, very expensive. I have one, it's this one right here. But the Mac Studio is also very, very expensive. And in this category, now, if you really need this performance, you will need a good display coupled to it. Because if you are doing pro work like photo editing, video editing, you need a good display. And so you have to spend a ton of money on a new display. While the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro is still plenty fast enough for 99 or 95% of prosumers out there. Not consumers, prosumers. So yes, I do think at this price range, it's way better deal than MacBook Pro, just because it comes with an amazing ProMotion 120Hz mini LED display, which is also bigger than the 14-inch. It has a 16-inch display, which is big enough. I've made a video talking about the fact that I don't think that the 16-inch MacBook Pro really needs an external display to work on. The display is so big, I didn't have found the news for that 32-inch external display that I have here, if you remember that video. So yes, this M1 Max MacBook Pro is good. I mean, the display is so big, so fluid, so incredible that I don't really care if you don't want it. I mean, it's just a cool add-on that you don't need to pay for an external display. Now, the Mac Studio, if you need a display to work on, then you will have to pay and shell out big bucks. I mean, if I do have to make a recommendation, buy the Studio display. Do not waste $1,000 on an LG display and then, oh man, that LG display is made of plastic. Oh man, that display is getting old. The portability and the fact that it doesn't have that much I/O, it sucks. I mean, I wish I had a display, the Studio display. Yeah, so go for the Studio display. Yeah, we will just be rumbling around for $600 and you will be roaming around for the next several years. So yes, External display is the way to go with a Mac Studio if you want to spend a good amount of money on a good display. So if you are thinking right now, well, I have the display and I have the Mac Studio, that combo, it's almost $4,000. Yes, $4,000. So you have to really think, because if you don't want to spend more than $2,600, then you will have no choice. I totally recommend the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro 16-inch. In my opinion, it's the best deal in terms of price per performance on the lineup, just because you will get a bigger display, which in my opinion is better. You will get 60 gigabytes of RAM, which is plenty enough with unified RAM. You will get an amazing, even better battery life in the 14-inch computer. It's not pinned, so I mean the 16-inch M1 Pro probably is the best Mac Apple Silicon, because the upgrade path over that just gets like, it's not worth it. You will get more performing this computer, but it's so much more expensive that I don't think it's worth it, in my opinion, for normal people or even normal prosumers. Not like like when you make a ton of money out of it doing. So yes, now in this price range with the top line M1 Max Mac Studio and the base model 16-inch MacBook Pro, I do recommend the 16-inch MacBook Pro, just because it has the display, it has the RAM, the same amount. No, wait, it has 16 gigabytes, so it has RAM, less RAM, but it has the best display of the bunch. You can't find a better display than this, trust me. It has the portability factor, it has the good keyboard, it has an amazing trackpad. I mean, it has Touch ID, it has everything. And so it has also a very good webcam, to say the least, and very good microphones and speakers. So you have to start weighing out, because the hardware that you get here is a way better package than the Mac Studio. If you have to buy the base model Mac Studio, then it's a good deal, because you can buy a cheap external display, cheap keyboard, cheap mouse, and you get very cheap computer and desktop with amazing performance from the M1 Max chip. But now you are spending $2,600, $2,700, $2,800, and then a display, and then a keyboard, and then a mouse, and that adds up quickly to $4,000. So yes, be careful in that range. And so that's why I think the M1 Pro and M1 Max are very similar in terms of performance, and that's why I recommend you the M1 Pro, MacBook Pro, over the M1 Max, not pinned Mac Studio. So this is a very balancing game of which upgrade paths will you choose. But finally, we get to the more expensive computers, the M1 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro and the M1 Ultra Mac Studio. In here, I will do a comparison from the design to the I/O, to the displays, to the performance, and to everything that you actually need from these two computers, so you can compare them better, because that's the most important and most funnest part of this video. It's comparing the two best computers in that price range. Of course, the Mac Studio can always upwards until $8,000 in terms of expensiveness, but the MacBook Pro can do that at least to $6,000. I mean, it just gets ridiculous by a point, and you don't really need it. But starting with the design, this MacBook Pro has an amazing design. It has that new design trend that Apple introduced in October with his MacBook Pro lineup. It's incredible. It's just amazing. It's just very comfortable to hold. It's a little bit heavy, bulky, but the battery life is just incredible. The display is amazing. And so this design trend has crossed over to the Mac Studio. The Mac Studio also has these rounded corners. It has this design language everywhere. So right now, in my opinion, which one would I choose? Well, in terms of design, I like them both, but I do think this MacBook Pro is more useful because it has a portable design, while the Mac Studio is more of a desktop computer. So for me, I do prefer this computer. But if you don't really care about that, then if you want more performance for the same amount of price, you should go for the desktop computer. And yes, I'm telling you this time that maybe the M1 Ultra Mac Studio is better deal, just because you get the M1 Ultra chip, you get 1 terabyte of storage, and you get 32 gigabytes of RAM. So if you are going for the spec version that I have here, which is the 32 gigabytes of RAM, it's the 32 GPU core GPU, of course. It has a 10-core CPU M1 Max, which is not pinned. It has 1 terabyte of storage. Well, it's the same price, or at least close to the price of a Mac Studio. And then you start to think, well, maybe that M1 Ultra, I mean, it's pinned, but maybe that M1 Ultra is appetizing. And then, of course, the amazing amount of I/O. If you are spending this amount of money on a computer, you will probably, 1, have a good display at home, 2, have the money to buy a good display, and also 3, you already bought the studio display. So yes, this price range, I do think that the M1 Ultra Mac Studio is the better deal, just because it combines the performance of this MacBook Pro and just doubles it, because it's 2 M1 Max chips, literally, like it's double the performance, literally. So it's double everything, I/O, performance. I mean, in terms of battery life, it's not double just because it doesn't have a battery, but it's double everything. But it's also very expensive to upgrade. But as you know, it starts at 1 terabyte, while this computer starts at 512. So yes, that's the difference. I do think that the M1 Ultra Mac Studio is an amazing deal, and if you have the display already, it's a no-brainer. But of course, like I was telling, the differences in I/O, if you want to know specifically, this MacBook Pro has MagSafe, while the Mac Studio doesn't. This MacBook Pro has 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 1 HDMI port, while the Mac Studio has 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports. If you go for this version, which is the M1 Ultra, you will get 6 Thunderbolt 4 ports, 4 at the back, 2 at the front. It has a SDX card slot. This one also has one. It has HDMI. That one also has one. But the Mac Studio has 10 gigabyte Ethernet, while this one doesn't, but you can find a cheap adapter and that problem is solved. Of course, that computer is a desktop and it pulls way more power than this laptop. This one has a 99.9 kilowatt battery on its chassis, and it lasts a long time, close to 12 to 15 hours while doing medium to high stuff, 20 to 22 hours while doing light, very light stuff like video streaming. It can last you over a week if you just stream videos, and if you are editing, 5 to 6 hours. So yes, the Mac Studio for the Studio Professional is a way better deal than the MacBook Pro, because if you have a Studio, then you already have a display, or you will buy a display, and if you buy this MacBook Pro, you probably want a bigger display to work on your Studio. So yes, you end up spending the same amount of money on displays, and then you compare the chassis, the M1 Ultra Mac Studio, it's better because it has the M1 Ultra, it has more storage, it has the same amount of RAM, but it probably can pinch out more performance from that M1 Ultra and that more RAM and that more GPU cores. And so yes, it has way better stuff and way better hardware than just this computer. If you don't really have an external display or are not planning to buy one, if you have a MacBook Pro, then I think that the MacBook Pro is still an amazing deal. And the choice, again, falls back on the side of, do you want a portable studio that you can take everywhere and just open up a 16-inch display and work there, and then buy an external display to have a home? Or do you want to just simply stay at home, work at home? You don't really work outside of home, or you have an iPad that does the job outside of home, you have a M1 MacBook Pro or the M1 MacBook Air. So yes, in that situation, the Mac Studio makes a ton of sense. But if you want your studio to be portable everywhere, you want to go to your work and connect to an external display and work there, or you want to go to your home office and work on your external display also, the MacBook Pro is an amazing choice. The M1 Max chip is fast enough for 98% of prosumers, not consumers again, prosumers. So that's a very, very, very high amount of computer users that are completely fulfilled by this performance. No YouTuber will need this amount of performance, not even MKBHD, which has told us that he can edit everything on his channel on the M1 Max. Now with the Mac Studio, of course, he will buy it because he likes to have that overhead with the Mac Pro and now with the Mac Studio. But every other YouTuber or even professional doesn't need more performance than this M1 Max. The Mac Studio M1 Ultra's chip is just focused on that very small and niche market that needs extreme performance out of their computer, or really wants more performance just because they do. So, do you understand me? I mean, the comparison is quite obvious. If you have a display, then go for the Mac Studio. If you don't have the display, then go for the MacBook Pro. If you do want to buy an external display for your MacBook Pro because you don't like the smaller 16-inch display because of some reason, then of course the Mac Studio just turns itself into the better deal, because you will have to buy an external display otherwise, and the Mac Studio just has better hardware than the MacBook Pro if you don't count the displays. But if you join the display to the fight, then it's more equilibrated because you have the M1 Max here, the M1 Ultra, M1 Ultra 2 times faster than this M1 Max. But here you have, of course, the mini LED, incredible 120 Hz ProMotion display that you can find anywhere else. So yes, it's a very tough decision to make, and let me know in the comments down below which is your decision. Would you go for the full spec'd out M1 Max MacBook Pro, or would you go for the M1 Ultra full spec'd out, or at least $4,000 similarly priced to the MacBook Pro? Let me know in the comments down below. And would you buy the Studio display if you were in that position, or would you simply buy a cheap Amazon display? Let me know in the comments down below that opinion. And of course, while you're there, don't forget to please leave a like and subscribe. I'm really appreciate if you do. I'm very happy with your support. Thank you guys. This week has been crazy. The Apple event has been crazy, and you can expect way more content to come. I will analyze every other content, like for the Apple Air 5 or even the iPhone SE 5G or the iPhone SE 3 if you want to. I mean, I will do tons of videos. I do expect this weekend to come out a camera comparison between the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the Samsung S22 Ultra, just because I got a little bit late by the fact that I have class now and Apple did an event and I have to focus more on that coverage of the event. But this weekend, the comparison between the cameras will come out if you are excited for that. But I think I have told you all about that I want to, and I think that it's pretty clear now that this is more difficult than just making a video. You have to analyze your sport, you have to analyze which position are you, and again, I will try to summarize this. Base models, it's very equilibrated. It depends on the fact that if you have a display at home or not, or do you want more a portable computer or not. Then if you go for the mid-tier models, the MacBook Pro, it's the way better deal, just because you get everything. You don't need to buy more things, and the performance difference probably doesn't matter for you. But if the performance is everything for you and you go for the upper sized, completely top of the line MacBook Pro and Mac Studio, then it depends again on the fact that do you want your studio to be portable, or do you want your studio to be the most amount of performance possible, and you don't really care about the display, you already have a good display at home, or you will be completely focused and you will want to buy in a good external display and don't really care. It's just part of the problem and the solving the problem, and so the Mac Studio then turns out to be the better option, just because you will get way better hardware for the same amount of money as the MacBook Pro, and you would end up spending the same amount of money. So yes, this is my opinion on it all. But what are yours? Leave in the comments down below. This is Tex talking to you here. Bye.